Hello, welcome. I am Miss Carla, and I am going to be doing another story time today. We're going to read, this time we're going to read an older book. And actually, the book itself is old, but the story is even older than that. Because this is a folk tale, the kind of story that gets passed down through families and communities for a very long time until they kind of develop a life of their own. And this book is called Stone Soup, and it's by Marcia Brown. And you can see this little label on here. It means it was a Caldecott Honor Book. Marcia Brown has written a lot of books, and she also did the illustrations. And she's quite a beloved author and illustrator. And this is one of the very popular versions of Stone Soup that I happen to have in my library. I wanted to say thank you to Macmillan for allowing the read aloud. We're going to do an activity with it afterwards, too, which I think is pretty fun, including a link that I'm going to place in the, the description, so you can see another video that I made that is sort of related to this. So we're going to read Stone Soup by Marcia Brown. This is a great, great story. It takes place, a long time ago. But the message of the story is very important for everybody now and in the future. So we have this cute picture at the front. Are her illustrations interesting? She only uses, it looks like white, brown, and orange. I don't think she even uses black, unless, I don't know if you'd call that black or brown, but there's only about 3 colors going on in here, including the white background of the page, which I think is very interesting. 3 soldiers trudged down a road in a strange country. They were on their way home from the wars. Besides being tired, they were hungry. In fact, they had eaten nothing for 2 days. "How I would like a good dinner tonight," said the first. "And a bed to sleep in," said the second. "But all that is impossible," said the third. "We must march on." On they marched. Suddenly, ahead of them, they saw the lights of a village. "Maybe we'll find a bite to eat there," said the first. "And a loft to sleep in," said the second. "No harm in asking," said the third. Now, the peasants of that place feared strangers. When they heard that 3 soldiers were coming down the road, they talked amongst themselves. "Here come 3 soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, but we have little enough for ourselves." And they hurried to hide their food. They pushed sacks of barley under the hay in the lofts. They lowered buckets of milk down the wells. They spread old quilts over the carrot bins. They hid their cabbages and potatoes under the beds. They hung their meat in the cellars. They hid all they had to eat. Then they waited. The soldiers stopped first at the house of Paul and Francois. "Good evening to you," they said. "Could you spare a bit of food for 3 hungry soldiers?" "We have no food for ourselves for 3 days," said Paul. Francois made a sad face. "It has been a poor harvest." The 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. "Could you spare a bit of food? And have you some corner where we could sleep for the night?" "Oh, no," said Albert. "We gave all we could spare to soldiers who came before you." "Our beds are full," said Louise. At Vincent and Marie's, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, and all the grain must be kept for seed. So it went all through the village. Not a peasant had any food to give away. They all had good reasons. One family had used the grain for feed. Another had an old sick father to care for. All had too many mouths to fill. The villagers stood in the street and sighed. They looked as hungry as they could. The three soldiers talked together. See, look, this is their sad faces and their hungry faces. They're holding their bellies. They're pretending, aren't they? Then the first soldier called out, "Good people!" The peasants drew near. "We are 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land. We have asked you for food, and you have no food. Well then, we'll have to make stone soup." The peasants stared. Stone soup? That would be something to know about. First, we'll need a large iron pot, the soldier said. The peasants brought the largest pot they could find. How else to cook enough? That's none too large, said the soldiers, but it will do. And now, water to fill it and a fire to heat it. That's a big pot. But I guess if you're cooking for the whole town, and that's where they're going to light the fire. Look, the pot is so big they had to bring it in on a wagon. It took many buckets of water to fill the pot. A fire was built on the village square, and the pot was set to boil. Look how everyone's working together to bring the water. And they worked together to bring the pot too. And now, if you please, 3 round, smooth stones. Those were easy enough to find. The peasants' eyes grew round as they watched the soldiers drop the stones into the pot. Look, they're working together to bring the stones too. They're pretty good at cooperating, aren't they? Any soup needs salt and pepper, said the soldiers as they began to stir. Children ran to fetch salt and pepper. Stones like these generally make good soup. But oh, if there were carrots, it would be much better. Why, I think I have a carrot or 2, said Francois, and off she ran. She came back with her apron full of carrots from the bin beneath the red quilt. The kids are helping with the spices, and Francois is helping with the carrots. A good stone soup should have cabbage, said the soldiers as they sliced the carrots into the pot. But no use asking for what you don't have. I think I could find a cabbage somewhere, said Marie, and she hurried home. Back she came with 3 cabbages from the cupboard under the bed. Look at the soldiers. Oh, Oliver. Look at the soldiers slicing the carrots with their swords. Oh, and is it Marie? Yep, Marie and a kid are bringing the cabbages. If only we had a bit of beef and a few potatoes, this soup would be good enough for a rich man's table. The peasants thought that over. They remembered their potatoes and the sides of beef hanging in the cellars. They ran to fetch them. A rich man's soup, and all from a few stones? It seemed like magic. Look at them all carrying stuff to help make the soup. Ah, sighed the soldiers as they stirred in the beef and potatoes. If only we had a little barley and a cup of milk. This soup would be fit for the king himself. Indeed, he asked for just such a soup when last he dined with us. The peasants looked at each other. The soldiers had entertained the king. Well, but no use asking for what you don't have, the soldiers sighed. The peasants brought their barley from the lofts. They brought their milk from the wells. The soldiers stirred the barley and milk into the steaming broth while the peasants stared. Bags of barley, buckets of milk. At last the soup was ready. All of you shall taste, the soldiers said. But first, a table must be set. Great tables were placed in the square, and all around were lighted torches. We're getting set up for a feast. Oh, look. This lady has got a stack of bowls, and she's helping them put the soup into bowls. Such a soup! How good it smelled! Truly fit for a king. But then the peasants asked themselves, would not such a soup require bread and a roast and cider? Soon a banquet was spread and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such soup, and fancy, made from stones. See the steam coming from the food and the smoke and the fire from the torches. It's such a cool atmosphere, like a big party or like a cookout in your backyard. They ate and drank and ate and drank, and after that, they danced. They danced and sang far into the night. Oh, look, these guys are playing instruments. He's got a fiddle or a violin, and he's got some kind of, he's blowing on something. I'm not sure what, oh, it almost looks like a bagpipe, because he's got a bag here, and it's got a tube coming out the top and the bottom. I'm not sure what kind of instrument that is exactly. Some kind of old-timey instrument, I guess. They're having such a good time together. At last, they were tired. Then the three soldiers asked, is there not a loft where we could sleep? Let three such wise and splendid gentlemen sleep in a loft? Indeed, they must have the best beds in the village. See, the stars are out because it's late at night. So the first soldier slept in the priest's house. The second soldier slept in the baker's house. And the third soldier slept in the mayor's house. In the morning, the whole village gathered in the square to give them a send-off. Many thanks for what you have taught us, the peasants said to the soldiers. We shall never go hungry now that we know how to make soup from stones. Oh, it's all in the knowing how, said the soldiers, and off they went down the road. And this family is watching them leave, and it says, "Such men do not grow on every bush." I think that means they're unique people, very interesting and worth knowing. And here they are, going down the road. And that's the end of the story. I like that story because we learn a lot in it. We learn about, how to make soup, and we learn about cooperation, and we learn about being generous, and how when everybody puts their resources together, you get something much more wonderful than if you just keep everything to yourself. So the activity for today is about making soup. And I want to talk about recipes and how you come up with the instructions to make a soup. So I wanted to show you this. This is a recipe card. Not everybody uses them. They used to be very popular years ago when you couldn't just look up a recipe on the internet. But it's like an index card. In this case, it folds over to be the size of one index card. And you might keep it in a box with all of your other recipes. And here it says recipe for, and then from the kitchen of, and then it has lots of lines. So this might be you write a recipe and then you give it to a friend and they can see it came from you. In this case, it says Mary Lou Shesky. That's my cousin. And then the recipe is for no-bake cookies. And we start the recipe off with all of the ingredients. 2 cups of sugar, a half cup of milk, a half cup of cocoa, a half cup of margarine. It's hard to read backwards, like butter. And then underneath all of the ingredients, you put the instructions. Put the first 4 ingredients in the saucepan, bring to a boil. Boil for 1 minute and 15 seconds, stirring frequently. Take off the heat, add next 3 ingredients. Spoon out on wax paper in round or oval shape. Cool and enjoy. Tastes like candy. On the back is a whole different recipe for making a cake. The link that I'm going to put in the bottom of my, or in the description of this video, is a video that I made where I made these cookies and I showed you everything that I did and how it all turned out. And it was pretty fun. It also features my cat Charlie very briefly, I think. So take a look at that if you're interested in recipes and cooking. For this story, I made I guess you could call it a recipe or a picture version of how they made the soup. So, and you can make this at home. I just drew the pictures very simply on cardboard and on construction paper. You could use regular paper and color it in with crayons or markers. So when they made the soup, they started with stones. And they put those in the bottom of the pot. Then they added water. So I made a little bucket of water. And they put that in there. Then what did they do? They wanted to season it, right, with spices. So they put salt and pepper. And then they said, oh, if only we had carrots. Carrots would be so good in this. But I know we don't have any carrots. And then magically they found the carrots. So here's carrots. And now your recipe would say, slice up the carrots before you put them in there. Then what was next? Was it cabbage? Oh, no use asking for what we don't have. But then they found the cabbage. And then, oh, potatoes. Slice the potatoes and the cabbage up too. Then, oh, I think it was beef. If only we had some beef. And then the last thing was milk. And barley. Do you know what barley is? It's a grain. I think it's kind of like rice or oats. So I drew little grains A lot of people put rice in soup, like chicken and rice. That's a really good soup. So then, before you knew it, they had filled up the whole pot with a delicious soup, all from a few stones. And I like this story because the soldiers in the story, they're kind of tricky, right? They suspect that the people in the town have food they could share, but they, instead of continuing to beg or trying to force them, they kind of trick them into sharing their food by making it seem like it's magic, by making it seem like, oh, just a little of this and a little of that will help. And it really did. So even though they kind of tricked the people in the town, they also helped them by showing them how working together can make something so much better. So another thing I think about with this story is, what if instead of carrots and cabbage and beef and potatoes and barley and milk, what if it was kindness and generosity and welcoming? What if it was music, singing, dancing, sharing? All of those things can come together to make a soup, if you will, of fun and of sharing and of goodness. And I think that we're all learning that currently, because in the story, everybody's out together in the town square and they're all gathering and having fun and very close together. And nowadays, we can't do that. We can't get in big groups, especially now that Memorial Day is coming up this Monday. But we can share our talents and our kind words and our ideas, like what I'm doing right now, sharing an idea for an activity, sharing a story, sharing a song. So we are very lucky to have the internet, most of us, those of us who do. And we're lucky to have ways to communicate with each other and to be kind to each other and to share what we do have. And it makes everybody's life a little bit better. So that's what I really like about this story, Stone Soup. And I hope you like the story and the activity. And be sure and check out the link that I'm going to post in just a minute in the description of this video so that you can watch how I make those no-bake cookies that I mentioned. Okay? Have a good day, and I will see you next week. Enjoy the holiday weekend and stay safe.